All right, the Fire Minute's back. Sorry for the hiatus, but cancer sucks, and I'm just glad to be here. I'm stoked to say I'm cancer free and I got a fresh outlook on life, so I won't be doing Fire Minutes as frequently. But in keeping with our style, when we have some valuable lessons learned or we evaluate things we definitely could have done better, we're not afraid to share because fuck the trolls. This is how we grow. I'd like to thank Corey and Jeff for being humble enough to share these lessons to everyone's benefit. Stay safe out there and I hope you enjoy.
Came in as a residential structure fire. As we're pulling up, we did see significant smoke and flames. It was fairly close to the station, so our response time was really fast. Usually, when me and Jeff go to a fire, whoever's side the fire is on, they're the one that kind of makes the call for where the ladder will be placed. But since this was so far back, we didn't really make a call at all because we couldn't see it. So
Oh yeah, so when I'm on the pump and I'm not on the nozzle, I typically scout everything before Corey pulls a line. And even if it's obvious, I still like to take a look on both sides just to make sure there's no better side door or there's no victim hanging out a window. Just to get what would be our version of a 360 the best I can. On the truck, I'd never really done that as thoroughly because you just try to get the ladder up where you can. But as you see here, the main body of that fire is right there on the alpha side, I guess you could call it, for the sake of the video. And we just chose to put the ladder right here on what would be the Bravo side for this video, even though I don't know if that's correct, and this was a bad spot, and this was my fault. Ideally, I would have just ran over to the corner and peeked my head around, and that whole back side of the building had plenty of room for a ladder that would have been unburned to the burn. But where I said to put the ladder was pretty much like a minute away from like our feet would have gone through. And you'll see when I go up, I was the first one up, and the ladder was in a good spot in theory because I wanted to cut a hole right over where the pump was going to be going in because there was such heavy fire. But the other side of the roof, on the other side of the ridge line, had already burned through, which I didn't see. And so you'll see when I go up there, my hook almost goes through. You can see some signs that are pretty textbook to not go on. Like the shingles are pretty much smoking. The biggest sign would be the roof is burned through the other side, but it was just really soft, and my train of thought was like, I'm already up here, and I'm standing here, and I'm not falling through, and we only have to go about 5 feet to the left. So my genius thought was to just tell them to be very careful. As a learning point, maybe just if the ladder spot's not obvious or there's a lot going on, we had talked about just taking that peek around the other corner and make sure your ladder's in a good spot, but just taking a second as a crew to be like, all right, we're all good here, let's go up. Instead of just going and then later on talking about it, that few seconds could have been a lot more useful for us than almost falling through.
looking back on this, I could have been a lot more heads up. And with the amount of smoke and fire production we got just from that first hole, I should have just started automatically cutting another one. Because also thinking back, like these guys are inside, they're trying to fight fire, put it out, and there was a ton of smoke and fire when we first arrived, so they're probably battling a good amount of heat. So I definitely could have helped them out by just going straight to cutting more holes or extending my hole down. But so there was some delay on that.
When you got dispatched as a residential structure fire, and then when you're walking up to it, it still looks like a residential fire, right?
Yes.
So in your head, you're mentally gearing up to be cutting holes over a home, right? And what did it end up being?
It ended up being basically a commercial building that was
Like a
disguised.
converted auto body residential, or it was weird.
Yeah, it was like an auto body shop in a large converted house, essentially, a 2-story house that was all 1 story, which probably makes it more confusing. But the fire was in that when we first came up. That main body of fire was traveling towards the back to the 2nd story. So Corey's cuts were good because he kind of did a long trench, almost like a 1-person trench, and that stopped that lateral spread. And afterwards, when we looked underneath, when the fire was out, you could see where the fire was stopped. It was at those holes. Like, it was coming right underneath and stopping there and coming out. So
Okay. Okay, so the takeaway is not committing necessarily to the first available location you can ladder the building. And if you think conditions are unsafe, get down, reevaluate or reposition, and then get after it. And another common theme on the roof that you just can't really get on a prop is that you don't know what you're going to find underneath. Here's that same roof on a different section and Corey and Jeff's experience.
When we started cutting gear, it was weird because the rafters were going opposite direction. So rather than going perpendicular to the ridge pole, they were going parallel. So I didn't know that until after we started, or Jeff tried to start punching it through. I could feel a lot of resistance, but I just thought that it was re-roofed a bunch of times. But it was super, super tough to cut through it.
Yeah.
And then right here, it felt like I was on a structural member, so I moved over a little bit to the right. But then it felt even worse, so I just went back to the original one and just figured that's just the way it is. But once he starts to punch through it and takes that that composite roll off of it, you could see that the sheathing was opposite. So that was a little strange, something that never encountered before. I was pretty relieved to see that Jeff was also tired right here because I was smoked.
Well, you pretty much cut a trench.
it's kind of when you do that thing, you take a knee because you're tired, but you're acting like you're looking inside. Like, oh yeah, okay. You're just.
And then on this section, did it end up? I saw you get down like you were going to punch this ceiling. Was there a ceiling?
No, I was doing a thing. I was taking a break. I was pretending. That's what I was talking about. I was just. Oh. There was no ceiling.
Okay. Yeah, you had me fooled. I would have thought you were working.
Now you know my tricks. It's not look tired.
Not like that one, Corey, where you like
we slowly tumbled.
over.
I slowly tumbled. Don't watch that one, guys.
Okay, well, Mike will do a little bit on there.